China's Romance with Missiles, a Chinese boy soldier's view on the front line. Thousands of miles away, 5 miles from the Pakistan/China border, sat two large armies opposite of one another. On one side was the army of Pakistan, on the other side was the even more vast army of China. In the sea of Chinese there stood a young soldier named Biao. He was of the lowest rank, just another grunt soldier out of hundreds of millions that were there. He was thinking, how did I ever get myself into this mess? Just 6 months ago, I went along with my friends and got a job in the military. Great pay, and my country hadn't been in a war for decades. So, I could have a nice job nearby my home. Then I would marry my longtime girlfriend. Coming out of high school, it seemed the best way for me to go. I never was smart in school, and Biao, be honest to yourself, you always chased after other things besides schooling. He gave a glance to his side, and there stood a timid young boy trying to keep his glasses up because they kept sliding down because of sweat. His military uniform was very clean, even with all the dust blowing in the wind. His body was skinny, making Biao think of a stick. The boy turned and looked at Biao, giving him a nervous smile. His name was Li. He was Biao's childhood friend. When all the other boys were drafted into the military, Li was reluctant at first, but after he was drafted, he gradually accepted it. He was glad to be put with his best friend. His nervous friend Li had a secret. He was the best martial artist Biao knew. His grimace of fear told Biao that Li, like him, would rather be anywhere but there. Li spoke up nervously. They say that we outnumber them 1 to 5. He then continued as if his knowledge was just to get his mind off what lay ahead. When they launched their nuclear missiles at us, they destroyed Hong Kong, Beijing, and Shanghai in one swoop. Beijing had a total of 45.75 million people, Shanghai had 48.121 million, and Hong Kong had 22,057,041. Roughly, that was. Biao had heard Li talk like this many times before. Li wasn't the top of his class, but Biao knew he easily could have been. In school, Li wanted to be normal like everyone else, but his secret of not marking all the right answers, even though he knew them, was known by very few. It was always about loyalty with Li. Li was more loyal than a brother to his friends. And Li was known for spewing random information or talking a lot when he was nervous. He then focused his attention back on what Li was babbling on about. We then sent out missiles against them, missiles that would destroy all human and animal life wherever it hit, and which ill effects would evaporate within 1 month's time. We bombed Karachi, which had a stomping population of 65 million. Lahore, which had 40 million. Islamabad, which had 15 million. And Faisalabad, which had 12 million. We made their population drop less than 500 million. Furious, they called a draft, getting every capable man between the ages of 1550. They then split that army in two, and sent one against India and the other against us. They brought only 1/4 of that into Tibet. They swept through killing people and destroying monasteries and other buildings in their wrath. The Tibetans that didn't flee into Tibet were slaughtered. Only 3% of the Tibetan population managed to escape to other parts of China, where they were resettled. Thanks to our gracious government and Lord Lubu the 72nd. Just imagine, all those ancient sites destroyed. But we met them with our own army, and have driven them back here. And now the government wants to show our strength by attacking with our entire army. Oh why? Why did I ever sign up? Yeah, this really is unlucky. And we just happen to be on the front line. Gasped Biao. Right at that moment, above their head they saw tiny missiles flying toward Pakistan. Biao grunted, "What in the world?" Li calculated and counted. Those were 59 neutron high-powered cruise missiles of the class in 11. The aftermath of catastrophic explosions. His friend never ceased to amaze him. That's enough to destroy every city above 100,000 and maybe more in Pakistan. The explosion went off in the distance. It grew bigger and bigger. It reminded Biao of a marshmallow allowed to cook in a microwave too long. Not just one explosion, but several in the distance. Several of those missiles found their marks closer than they had thought. Just then, a strong wind blew across from that direction, bringing debris flying into their faces. Li fell over in exasperation, while Biao clenched his teeth and firmly held his ground. Everyone was silent for that moment, and sounds of thunder came rolling toward them. Biao helped pick up his friend. Beside him, a man was licking his lips. Biao had talked to this man before, a newbie like himself. All he ever talked about was wanting to kill, and Biao could see now in his eyes the lust for blood. Charge came across a microphone, and before he knew it, he was running full speed down a large sloping hill. They ran up and down another hill, continuing this until Biao saw a sea coming at him. But it wasn't a sea of water, but of millions upon millions of Pakistani soldiers. Holding his rifle in front of him, he knew he better take a shot before his enemy did, but then he'd need his bullets. He thought, I don't understand why we are even fighting a battle this way, just throwing us at them like this. This isn't how battles are fought with goo. His thoughts were interrupted when bullets started to fly by. He charged on. An enemy was aiming his gun at him, but he was saved when Li shot him. They gave each other a nod. The battle was carnage. Above him, jets from either side were in dog fights with each other. Some of their stray missiles blew up on the ground below. His body became a machine, his mind completely shut off. His instincts had totally kicked in. He was in too much shock and horror to even think. His finger pressed the trigger and he cut through crowds. But to his surprise, Li moved and shot like it was natural for him, as if his fears were gone. The tears ran down his face. Why me? Slowly, the men who had been on the front line with them disappeared while new ones took their place. Even the bloodlusting man was no longer there. Biao and Li went on. Li screamed, "Best of friends." Biao yelled, "To our ends." Minutes seemed like hours, and hours seemed like eternity. They shot and were shot at, with bullets whizzing by and agony ringing. When one gun ran out of bullets, they grabbed another one off the ground. It was a strategy they thought up one night in the barracks. Li had found a way to tell how many bullets a gun had just by looking at it, which he taught Biao. And it seemed to be working well for them. Because the front lines of both armies' infantry were spread so far, they weren't as thick as they might have been if it was shorter. Only 5 miles in depth, but 30 miles in length. These poor boys didn't know this, and they didn't know what lay ahead. But they began to hear it. It sounded like motorized vehicles. They were out of the Pakistanis' infantry. Li looked at his watch. Nearly 6 hours has passed since we started. Clouds rose in the distance from the ground. Biao gasped. Hover tanks were coming at them at high speed. "Cheech," screeched Li. His right arm from the elbow and below was missing. Biao quickly shot the Pakistani soldier who shot Li, but Li was squirming on the ground in pain. His right arm below the elbow had been shot off. Biao didn't like the look of his chances with the hover tanks, and he knew his friend needed medical care. "What am I to do?" Li screamed, "Wrap my arm above the wound. Make it tight, so tight it will stop bleeding." Biao did as he was told. Li then passed out from the pain. The hover tanks were getting closer. He picked up Skinny Li and put him over his shoulder. He had to get him to the medics in the back. Biao ran to the end of the line as fast as he could, shouting, "Medic! Medic! Where's the medic?" After running for 5 minutes, he turned around to see a hover tank plowing through the Chinese infantry heading his way. He ran even faster. It was lessening the gap between them. A soldier's account, survival and loss. The old man scoffed, of course it is. Let me see your tags." He showed the old sergeant. The sergeant sighed. You're the first one here today. You know the 101st unit was in the front lines. I've been sitting here by the communicator, listening to hear what's going on. Your unit was 10,000 strong. I've only heard reports of a few entering hospitals, the last one being a Chin Lee. Were you with him, Private? Yes, sir, I was with him. I brought him to the medic. I want to be put back with my unit, sir. A destroyed military unit, soldiers recovering from wounds. A soldier receiving orders about a new unit assignment. A soldier walking towards Unit 100, a building in a military camp. The old sergeant coolly saluted him, and Biao saluted him with a tight, "Thank you, sir." Biao walked to the other building and walked in. There were many men inside, and several took him to the room he needed to go to. He walked into a large room filled with men. It seemed urgent. They walked him to the front of the line and handed in his papers. The man behind the counter looked exhausted. He had a large mug of thick coffee in his hands. He looked up at the saluting Biao and said, "My goodness, you're just a boy." A fresh newbie with snot still on his sleeves. "How old are you?" Biao said, "I'm 18, sir." "You have no idea what's been happening, do you?" "Well, we won this battle. Now our jets are blowing up resistance in the mountains, using that new missile technology, the one that makes sharp explosions that cut 200 meters deep in dirt and stone. The medics were sent out, and are still bringing in the wounded. It's been reported that not one soldier from the 101st unit is still standing. All are dead or wounded. None are even reported coming towards the hospital. None even in other units. It's amazing a newbie like you from the front is even still standing here. What did you do, run right at the get-go?" "No, sir, I kept in the charge, up to the point where the enemy's hover tanks came in, sir. Then I ran away with a wounded man. I managed to get him to a medic camp. I came with him here. I had doctor's permission to come," said Biao. "Well, there will be an investigation done on this. To say the least. We will have the satellites brought up on the 101st Infantry Unit. Corporal Wa, go send in this order to have this man's background investigated." Prompt. Corporal Wa did just that. "You might face court-martial charges for this one, young boy. I don't believe you one bit. You ran away as soon as the fighting started. You'll be thrown in correctional prison for 6 months for this." Biao could hear this man cursing under his breath. "Private Biao, I want you to go sit in that corner. We'll take care of you soon enough." The man had an evil grin come to his face. It seemed this man, a lieutenant, really enjoyed this. Biao didn't move, but said, "Sir, let me prove myself. Send me back to the front line right now. Send me. Give me at least that chance, sir." The lieutenant looked at him for a moment, and then a big smile came across his sly face. "Okay, Private Biao. A helicopter is coming right at this moment to pick up officers to take back to the front line. You can go with them. Here, take this slip I've signed. But remember, I'm still having you investigated. Soldier, take this filth away from me and bring him to the heliopad above." Biao saluted, then walked away with the soldier. He waited only a while when a twin-propelled helicopter came down. Officers came out from a glass room on top of the building and joined Biao in getting in the helicopter. Biao wondered what would be next. Chapter 6: The First Night's Dream in the New Unit. Biao sat silently in the back of the helicopter. There was one man who was already on the helicopter in the back when he entered. The man spoke up, "Going back to the front line, are you? From now on they'll be pillaging villages and gathering up women. Dream. No, you have no chance to tell the world. There are none around to listen to you. If it was just you alone, your witness can't hold up against this. And they will kill you before you get a word out. Plus, you are here, said the president. I can run away, I can escape. Then I can tell the world. No, you can't, Biao. Your military is around for miles. They will catch you, and you are already under suspicion for being a coward. They would imprison you for years, or even have you executed. What can I do then? Shouted Biao. You must write down all that is said in this dream when you awake. Next, you must sneak over to the officers' medic camp, and you must break in. There you will find medicine to fight against the ill effects of the AN nuclear missile. If you don't get this cure within 6 days, your body will start to decay within 4 years. Thirdly, you must go visit Lee and tell him this information personally. Don't worry about him, he is intelligent. He will know that he needs a cure for it. I'm sure his uncle would be willing to sneak him one, even if he is caught. He already knows about it and has already taken one himself. Now go. The Pakistan president, soldiers, and Lee started to fade away, with all saying, "Get it." Biao woke up in a sweat, looking at his watch. He had only been sleeping for 3 hours. Quickly, he took a flashlight, paper and pencil, and put on his clothes. It was dark, but he knew what he must do. Outside he went, acting at first as if he was only going to use the restroom. Once out, he crept past the half-asleep guards. He got next to some bushes, and then took out a map they had given of the setup of the camp. Studying where the officers' medic camp was, he stealthily went his way toward it. He went around so not to come across any guards. He threw a rock 100 yards away from it to get the attention of the guards, then he went up to the large tent of the officers' medic camps. He remembered when he was a child, one of his notorious friends, whose nickname was Billy. He knew all the ways of sneaking into buildings. For several weeks, he tried to talk Biao into sneaking into a candy store. Biao finally went once, and his friend went up to a window and broke in. After he did this, Biao hesitantly backed off and ran away. Biao opened the window of the tent. It wasn't too hard. He went inside. Taking his flashlight, he looked through the bottles for what he was looking for. After he found it, he took one out. Looking over the medicine, he had to think of how to administer it to himself. He thought it must be through injection. Taking a clean new needle, he looked for a vein. Seeing one in his arm, he stuck it in. He bit back from screaming and made sure all the injection went in. He hoped he did it well. Knowing he had to replace it with something, he put water inside the empty bottle and put it back. Now he had to get out of the tent. He crept out the window and slipped away into the night. Once he got close to his barracks, he stopped and wrote down his dream under the full moon's light. He went inside and fell asleep. Chapter 7, To the Front Again. Biao woke up from the sound of a trumpet blast. Quickly he got up and felt as if all that happened last night was a vague dream. He looked at his arm and saw the little needle scar in his arm. This helped him remember about last night. He got up and cleaned his face and underarms with the rest of the men in his barracks. They had only 15 minutes before the sergeant would show. As if to pronounce himself to the world, the sergeant was immediately screaming at the top of his lungs at every single mistake in dress or bedding the soldiers had made. Going through the line, he finally came to Biao, who was 3 men away from the other end's door. The tent's doors were brown leather flaps. Anyone could enter just by lifting them. The sergeant stopped at Biao, examined him, and then spoke loudly to the others. "How do you like that, boys? This new recruit outdoes you all like a tiger does a cat in hunting. Do you all know who this new recruit is? This is Private Biao, from the 101st Unit." Everyone gasped except Biao and the sergeant. The sergeant turned toward Biao and shouted for all to hear, not caring if spit flew out his mouth. "I don't know if you are a coward or the champion of the toughest man contest. Biao walked to the Jeep number on the paper slip and had a long ride where he sat in the armored back alone. In spite of the horrors he had seen that day, his mind blanked out and he slept. Chapter 9: Visiting Lee in the Hospital. Biao arrived at the military base where Lee was at 5 a.m. in the morning. He went to the barracks and quickly showered and changed. He went to see Lee 5:30 a.m. Since it was early, Lee would still be sleeping. No one was at the front desk yet. He got into the elevator going to the second floor. What was once a hall full of female nurses running to and fro now seemed rather empty and quiet. He asked a plump lady behind the desk how to find his friend. "He's been transferred to room 411, fourth floor," she said. Puzzled, Biao asked her, "Where have all the patients gone?" "Most have been sent back to the war. Others have been sent to rehab centers. After most surgeries were completed yesterday, large helicopters came and picked up most of them. Poor souls, one man had both legs blown off. The men in critical condition are still here, plus a few stragglers. Most of the staff are going to Pakistan, where they'll be using the old hospitals for military hospitals. They have all the equipment that is needed. I hope that information can help." "That helps me a lot, ma'am." "Thank you," Biao said as he walked to the elevator. He was wondering what would happen to Lee. He found Lee's room and, knocking softly, walked in. Lee was sound asleep. He sat down next to the bed, noticing Lee had an M4 in his arm and a button in his hand. Painkiller on demand. Biao had mixed feelings, sad to see his best friend in such a bad condition and happy to see him alive. Lee could be dead. A young nurse came in. Biao's mouth gaped open. She had an hourglass figure, with long silky hair that was put up in a French bun. Her lips were luscious, and her eyes deep and soft. She was checking over Lee. Her tender care was a wonderful thing to see. Lee was deep in sleep, smiling as if he was in a wonderful place. "How is he?" was all Biao could manage to say. "Well, considering his condition when he came in, he is doing fine. You must be one of his friends." "I'm Cindy." "Nice to meet you, Cindy." "I'm Biao." She continued talking to him over her back, being that she was busy checking on Lee. "Oh, you're his best friend. Lee told us all about you. He had 4 of us watching over him all day yesterday." Biao thought to himself, being here would be like being in heaven for Lee, after what he went through. "Well, nice to meet you, Biao. My time is up, and I can leave work now. I hope Lee does well. He's been a pleasure to have as a patient. I'll miss him." "Is he leaving today?" "Yes, he's leaving today at 12 p.m. Me and the other nurses want to give him this Get Well card." She stuck it in Lee's backpack. "We don't usually have such nice boys here." She blushed and covered her face with her hand. "Thank you, I'll tell him. He asked for some of our emails last night. The other nurses wanted to also give him their contacts. Make sure he knows we'll be looking forward to hearing from him when he can write us." "Thank you, Cindy. I will tell him. It was a pleasure meeting you." "You, too. And tell Lee that I wanted to personally thank him for the honor of having him as a patient." She bent over and touched Lee's cheek with her hand. She walked out, her hips swaying. She looked over her shoulder with one long, last look. Biao noticed that he had been drooling, and quickly found a napkin to wipe his face. He didn't want Lee to see the drool. Lee was a very clean person. Cindy spoke, "We can't lose any more nice people out there. Lee never should have been in this war." Biao thought to himself, what makes all these girls like Lee so much? I never thought he was very handsome. He isn't rich, doesn't have a high ranking. Maybe it's because he's wounded, like a little kitten or rabbit. As Biao looked at Lee, he admitted that yes, Lee was a very nice boy. Lee, I want to give you something. Take good care of it. Biao took out a piece of paper. This is a description of a dream I had. All that I saw was true. Lee read it. He looked a bit confused. That's weird. That same night my uncle gave me medicine to help go against the missile's affects. I just thought everyone got it. And I want to transfer to your camera the pictures I took of the execution and capture of the innocent people. Okay, my camera is in my backpack. Go ahead and transfer it. But I don't know what I can do with all this information. Lee, just keep it safe for me, okay? That's all I ask. No problem. You know, my uncle is coming here at 11. He's going with me to Urumqi, then from there he's going to see my mom for a week. They talked and talked that day, about old times and hopefully new good times. At 10:40 a.m., Dr. Gao stepped in. Both smiled to see him. I'm surprised to see you here, Biao. I guess you already know about us leaving in an hour. Lee, I have everything packed and ready to go. I've got some sweatpants for you to wear. And a sleeveless shirt. While they were visiting, nurses started casually coming and going and standing in the hallway outside. They all hated to see Lee leave and would miss him. So Lee and Dr. Gao graciously visited with them, expressing their appreciation for the good care Lee had been given. The curtain was pulled, and when they were opened, Lee was dressed and ready to go. He also had a very big grin on his face. One nurse started crying and said to her friends, I can't believe they're leaving. Is my dream going to end? 3 of her friends began sobbing with her. 15 minutes before 12 p.m., the 2 burly Russian nurses came and screaming at the top of their lungs at the nurses, even those who were off duty. The raspy-voiced one was the first to speak. Time to get back to work. There's plenty of patients to take care of. And the rest of you need to get going. These men have a flight to catch. And you women need to get the rest of the patients ready to leave as well. The young women, Biao had counted at least 40 in all, were all rushing to get their bows, hugs, and some even kisses in amongst themselves before some left with Lee and Dr. Gao. None kissed Dr. Gao. Dr. Gao pulled one nurse aside and was talking to her privately. She looked to be in her late 20s. She had a kind and sophisticated appearance, but at the same time was beautiful. She wore thin glasses hanging on her nose. She wrote something down and gave it to Dr. Gao. Dr. Gao gave her a deep hug, and she gave back a gentle, deep hug back. Tears were in her eyes. The nurses hastily went back to work. Dr. Gao put Lee's backpack on his own back and helped Lee stand. They had to wait in line at the elevator. With so many patients leaving in one day, it was almost chaotic. Each time an elevator arrived, patients were crowded into them, sometimes even patients on beds. How many patients are leaving on the helicopter today? Asked Biao to Dr. Gao. Almost all the patients are leaving, only 3% are staying behind. Most of the staff are leaving as well, but not to Urumqi. Most are being sent to the hospitals being occupied in Pakistan. Dr. Gao spoke absent-mindedly. Biao didn't know whether to pity Lee or be jealous of him. Chapter 10, Biao's Heated Quarrel and Lee's Departure. Just then, Biao saw twin girls open up the entrance to the stairway. One was Cindy and one was Candy, though Biao couldn't tell who was who. One was wearing tight shorts with a sleeveless red shirt, the other a long, flowing blue dress. Lee bent over to Biao and said, "The one in the dress is Cindy, the other one is Candy. Cindy is the more modest of the two. But Candy, wow, she packs a punch. I think she's a bit strange. You know, they used to work as models, and even had minor roles acting in movies. But they were conscripted to serve in the military for a year after the war started. They both have training as nurses. They passed the test for it right after high school." Candy came up to Lee first. "We're so sorry. Heated words. Why, you sloven, inconsiderate, brash, and backward country bumpkin. How dare you say something like that to me? I am leagues beyond you. Yeah, leagues deeper in the depths of the cruelest and most selfish sea. You're a few light years behind, you. Why don't you go get your stick and beat me over the head? You're nothing but an uncaring brutish pig. She slapped him on the other side of the face. At this point, Cindy spoke up loudly to Candy. Her voice was as firm as a boulder. Candy, you're acting like a selfish brat. Stop embarrassing us. If he doesn't want to be with you, then he doesn't want to be with you. There's nothing you can do about it. Now try to at least act sensible. Candy, at that point, Candy and Biao forced others around them to move so they could turn their backs away from each other. With arms crossed, they both looked mad. Biao's cheeks were red from being slapped and from embarrassment. Dr. Gao and the others looked like they had an atom bomb dropped on them because of how embarrassed they were. The rest of the elevator ride for Biao seemed like an hour, even though it was only 5 minutes. They all got out and walked toward the helicopter. Biao and Candy were still ignoring each other and giving each other angry looks. At the helicopter, Lee gave Biao a hug, and Dr. Gao heartily shook his hand. Staring at them, Biao said, "I hope to see you again, my friend. And it was the greatest honor to meet you and to get to know you, Dr. Gao. You have my deepest respect. Thank you so much for taking care of Lee." "Don't mention it, Biao. I'd rather be nowhere else right now. I feel that something missing in my life has been found. See you later, Biao, and good luck." Lee dazingly said, "Biao, I wish you all the luck in the world. When and if you can, keep in touch with me, okay? I won't give up my prayers for you. I would turn many wheels to see you safely home. Cindy, I really hope we can meet again one day. I'll stay in touch when I can. Take care of yourself and your little ninja Buddha," Biao said. Both chuckled at that remark. Lee used to always carry a little Buddha statue in his pocket. The statue got lost, and they went looking all over his house for it. They finally gave up. Later, they found it in its sitting position on his windowsill. From then on, they occasionally joked around about the ninja Buddha he got from his grandmother. He made a necklace out of it after his grandmother died a few years ago, and ever since always wore it around his neck. Lee waved by, and then got on the helicopter with his uncle. Biao and the two twins backed away from it, and waved while it flew away. Biao felt a bit lonely. He felt a bit of sadness. He started to walk away towards the elevator. Cindy and Candy were walking beside him, though Candy at a distance. Biao didn't know what was wrong with Candy. Cindy spoke up, "It was nice meeting you, Biao. I hope to see you with Lee again." The elevator had nurses and staff crammed into it. Biao found himself in the middle of a tightly squeezed room with only one male, that being him. During all this time, Candy was standing next to him. Occasionally they gave each other dirty looks. The tension was so thick, Biao could feel it in his bones. Cindy broke the silence by saying, "I wonder what it would be like to fly in one of those quad-helicopters. Aren't they so cool? I just love helicopters. You know, the spinning things on top? I wonder what it would feel like to, well, maybe I don't wonder about that." But it had all those. She just kept on going and wouldn't stop. Finally, Candy and Biao both looked at her and shouted, "Shut up." Cindy added, "Can't you see I'm too upset to listen to you?" Then Biao added, "Yeah, I'm not in the mood for it." Then they both started at Cindy simultaneously, and Cindy smiled at them when they did. This made it worse and made them go even more. They made it to the second floor, and everyone started getting out while new patients to be brought up were put on. Biao and Candy started arguing over who'd go down the stairs last. Finally, Candy stormed down. Cindy started laughing out loud at this point. I disconnected. Sure. Then she was gone. Lost in cyberspace. Out of his life forever. He never felt so lonely in his life. For 9 minutes, he just sat there, looking at the screen. There were so many unanswered questions. He decided to try chatting with her again, to try to plead his case. He got online and tried to get back with her. He saw that she had canceled her friendship with him. She had even blocked him. He wondered if he could send her an email, so he tried sending a short message. It didn't work. He decided to go out into the hall and try calling her. Slipping the coins in, he dialed her cell number. He waited while it rang. 1, 2, 3. Finally, after the 8 ring, something came on. He started to speak, but an automated voice said, "We're sorry, that number no longer exists." He bent over and started crying. He couldn't hold it back. It was like 1,000 gallons of rain fell on him. He walked, sobbing, unable to stop, and went outside. He found a shadowy place away from everyone. He sat there and wailed to himself. The first day he met her, they were both only 14 years old. He was so shy back then around girls. They were in many classes together, and they hung out with the same friends. When he was 16 years old, a few months from 17, his friends found out that he liked her and helped get them together. He was surprised to find out she also liked him. That was the happiest day of his life. They were an item after that. Biao thought, "I failed the tests to get into any college. And I wasn't talented enough in baseball or anything else to do anything in those fields. Maybe she's right. Maybe I'm a nobody. I know I'm not worth it. I know she can do better than me. My only other option besides joining the military was to be a cleaner. Or some other low-paying job. I really am a nobody. And that stupid candy girl, why did she have to do that to me? Bratty girl." He remembered the slip of paper Cindy gave him. Half of him wanted to go to the hospital and find it, and the other half told him she was a stupid girl and to forget about it. He then thought, even if I were to go and find her address, what good would it do? What would I say to her? "Oh, I'm sorry. How about we go on a date?" No, I can't do that. And anyway, her attitude was so bad it would be like going from the heat to the fire. But maybe, it's a stupid idea. Just move on and forget about her. It's not even worth trying. He stopped crying. He went inside feeling droopy. He decided to go back online, maybe try doing some research about some of the things he dreamed about. Maybe he could find some good jokes. Maybe it would help him forget about what just happened. But the more he tried to forget about it, the harder it became for him not to think about it. He was filled with self-pity. Then something happened. His father's words came to him, "What you do doesn't matter. What matters is what you make of what you do. And if someone makes fun of you for being poor again, remember your value isn't about how much money you have or what position you have or your family is in. What makes you special is because you are you. Because of who you are." He was somebody. Because of who he was inside. He then remembered Lee. Lee would be dead if it wasn't for him. He had saved his best friend's life. And he had many other friends who cared about him, and his family, who loved him so much. He had a lot to be thankful for. After all, he could have died several times, but he was alive. Yes, he was somebody. He was a survivor. Chapter 12, The Training. Biao joined a number of men being flown to where they would be trained for 10 days, and then tested to see if they could join this elite group. He still didn't know what it was all about and too embarrassed to ask. What he did know was that he was surrounded by talented men. All around him, he heard men boasting about what they'd done or accomplished. He walked around the room, listening to conversations. Many were college graduates and/or were officers in the Army, Navy, Air Force, or other divisions. Some were noted police officers known for their work in their area. The first test, a challenge of survival. More men entered the building before the time limit was up. When all were counted, only 98 out of 300 had made it. Some had welts on their bodies from paintballs. They had taken off their splattered shirts that were hit and thought they could get away with showing up. A woman's voice on a speaker came across the room. "Congratulations. You have passed the first test. The second test will judge your ability in escaping unknown buildings. You are welcome to use the self-defense techniques on the guards you come across." Just then, the entire building started shifting and moving lower and lower into the ground. Many scurried to look out the windows, only to see that fiberglass sheets and rose from within them to allow no access out. But they could see dirt. Then they saw a vast underground fortress. Little vehicles scurried on the distant ground below. After what seemed like 20 floors, the building went even further down. Finally, it stopped. The woman's voice came on the mic. "Welcome to your next test. You must first make your way through a maze of tunnels, and then escape the fortress above. Once you've made it to the surface, you must escape the surrounding terrain by making it to the T Air Force Base 40 kilometers to the east. Good luck." 20 exits opened. Some of the men rushed to them. Instantly, 10 fell to the floor. The woman's voice came back on. "Did I forget to mention the maze has booby traps? If anyone is struck by one, they will more than likely be instantly made unconscious, not killed. It is advised not to try to help them, for you might fall for the same." She was too late, for men were shocked unconscious trying to help the men who were first knocked out. Trap. 11 men were already taken down. Biao was glad all of them were men that had welts on their bodies. Biao knew this wouldn't be easy. Out of the 20 exits, there were 12 exits left. One had a man there already, lucky not to have been knocked out like the rest. All the men huddled together. One wearing glasses and having messy hair spoke up. "These rooms could have any kind of traps. Laser-sensitive traps even. With these kind of traps, there shouldn't be too many guards in this part of it. I think we are going to need to take off our shirts and our shoes. We all need to then each pick an exit, preferably one not already booby-trapped, and we need to throw our shirts in the air and our shoes on the ground. All at the same time, ahead of us. We need to do it in a way to hit every single area in the air and on the ground that might be rigged. It's better we do this than just walk blindly. First, let's check the rest of the exits." All the others agreed with him. Biao was surprised at the others' willingness to cooperate. They all lined up and took their shirt and shoes off. They soon found that there were only 2 ways that didn't have an immediate booby trap. The man wearing the glasses suggested they split into 2 groups, about 40 each. Biao decided to go with the man wearing the glasses. He soon found out from listening to others that his name was Shi Yunin. Things were going well for a while, then they came to their first split in the tunnel. They split up. Biao again wanted to go along with Shi Yun's group. They soon learned that it was typically only on certain areas of the ground that the traps were set. They then came across the second split. They tested it like before and then split up. Biao felt something weird. He walked inside the 2 paths, smelling the air and feeling it. He then had this weird thought, "I wonder if the ground is lower in one area and higher in the other." While the rest were leaving, he got on his belly and put his arm on either path. Sure enough, the one on the right was going downward and the one on the left was going upward. He screamed to the others, "Wait! Wait! This path is going upward and that one is going downward. I believe that this one on the right will only lead us back to where we came before." Shi Yunin turned and looked at him, then he smiled and said, "Okay, you can stay there and wait for the others to get here, then tell them the right way to come. Good luck." He then took his group and continued walking ahead. Biao didn't know how long it would take the other group to get to him, but sure enough, after only 10 minutes, they did. Biao told them, "Come, follow me, the others are ahead. We figured out the way you went is a circle."
Biao thought about doing a stick-up, but there were 15 soldiers manning the computers, including 3 that were women, 4 officers, and 8 guards. Biao decided to do differently, though. He spoke up. "I know where they are, sir." Several of them looked at him. "Where are they, Private?" asked one of the officers. Biao started shooting his gun in a fray. "They're right here!" Biao and the 3 others shot the 8 guards and 15 soldiers manning the computers within an instant. The 15 soldiers who manned the computers were unarmed. The guards themselves only had tasers on them. The 4 officers were standing there all alone. "I wouldn't try anything if I were you. We'll take you right down with your men," said Biao. He walked over to them and took their walkie-talkies and weapons. He noticed that each guard had several handcuffs on him. He counted 24 in all. "New, handcuff all the computer guys and the guards. Make sure you do it behind their backs." New took the handcuffs from the guards and handcuffed every guard first and then the soldiers who were manning the computers. "Make sure you cuff those guys so they are still sitting in their seats and make them look like they are looking at their computer screens," said Biao. He also had Noi put the guards so they were sitting in the chairs in the room with their sunglasses on. He had all their walkie-talkies taken and means of communicating. He found the alarm buttons and made sure no one was nearby. During all this, 15 minutes passed. Xin Yunyin stepped in with 8 others. He gasped, "Wow, I missed all the fun. It looks like you guys beat me to it. Hello, Colonel Shui. Are these boys making you feel comfortable?" The officer with gray hair and a dignified look stood there examining all of them with an intent eye. He then spoke. "This young man who's taken over this room, his name is Si Biao. Am I correct?" Xinyun looked a little surprised. Yes, he is!" Colonel Shui chuckled to himself. "See, I told you, he has the eyes of a dragon." Biao was slightly blushing at this point, but handed the colonel's walkie-talkie to him. He then asked, "Do you think you can be the colonel? Can you mimic his voice?" "He has the eyes of a dragon," Xinyun said in a perfect mimic of the colonel. Biao spoke. "Okay, we are going to get some food and then we are going to get out of here. We need to get the others first before we leave." "That's doable. Remember, we planned it so everyone would try to get a uniform and a ways of communicating. We also told them what channel to put it on. I'll contact them now. So how are we going to get out?" "Sorry, officers, I can't have you hear my escape plan." Just then, Biao shot all 4 of them, making each collapse on the sofa behind them knocked out. The colonel smiled before he was shot. Biao continued his conversation with Xinyun. "We're going to take the quickest way out of here. We are going to fly out." Xinyun got on the colonel's walkie-talkie and put it on the right channel. "I need the units that came here to get the trainees to meet at the helipad in 45 minutes. The trainees have been captured and will be shipped out. I repeat, a large majority have been captured and need to be flown out." After having the officers tied, they all left to go to the mess hall. The kitchen was there. Once they arrived, no one was working, but it was open. They got in the back and started taking boxes of food. Meat, fruits, breads, and they put them in boxes. Several of them were given the job of carrying it toward the helipad. After a while there, and getting some food in themselves, they marched off toward the helipad. Xinyun had put one of the lower-ranked officers' uniform on, as did another man before. They had some of the men with them put back on their regular clothes they were wearing before, and had them march in front of them as if they had been captured. Once they got to the clear open space where the helipad was, they noticed others had done a similar plan as them, having some in soldier uniforms and the rest in their regular clothing. They all marched up to the helicopters as if nothing was wrong, and this was routine. They got in them. Luckily, some of them knew how to fly helicopters. Now there was one problem. The ground above wasn't opened yet, so Xinyun said on his walkie-talkie in the colonel's voice, "This is Colonel Shui. Can someone please open the helicopter exit?" It was opened. They all flew out. They took a large two-propelled helicopter that could hold 30 passengers and a smaller helicopter that could hold 8. In all, 40 of them escaped. Chapter 6: A strategic plan for investigation and rest. I'll go over there and see what it's all about, and everyone else can find somewhere to sleep. Xingyun. Not a bad idea. Everyone does need some rest. We'll have them leave to one of the empty rooms in this building 2 every 10 minutes, as not to be suspicious looking. Yeah, I'll go with you. I am an officer after all. They'll allow me in with you as my assistant much sooner than let some regular soldier in. Yeah, okay, let's go. Xingyun and his junior Biao left to the building number 4. Little did they know just how much their lives would change after that day. Chapter 19, Building the 4. Biao and Xingyun triumphantly walked into this building. Xingyun just flashed his card he got from the officer to go to each new section. He received many salutes. They asked scientists questions. Some answers they got were, this room is for flight simulation. This room is for space simulation. This room is where they learn about espionage. But usually they didn't ask questions and just walked around and observed. After 2 hours, they left the building. They found all the others and told them they just needed to go to this building and get it done with. So all of them walked out and into this building. Xingyun said to the front desk clerk, "We're testers who passed the other tests. We're here for the next procedure." Stunned, the clerk pressed a button and said, "Sir, we have about 40 guys here who say they passed the other tests. What do I do?" "Okay, I'll let them in. Go right ahead, you may enter." When they entered, many scientists came out to meet them. They took each one and was measuring them. "We need each of you to first take a shower in the shower room. Then we need you to each follow one of these scientists. They will bring you to a room where they will hook things up to you, and then you can rest for 8 hours. We will always be testing and monitoring your bodies. You'll have 2 weeks here. By the time you're done, your skills in espionage will be the best in the world. You will be able to drive or fly anything. You will be able to fluently speak Arabic, Hindi, Spanish, English, Russian, Indonesian, Korean, Japanese, Persian, Portuguese, French, etc. This chip that we will put inside your brain within your language cortex will allow you to speak all these different languages. It won't be detected by a metal detector. If you are caught, it will sense this and take away all your ability to speak. Don't worry though, you'll be able to speak once again after you escape. Now please everyone, get cleaned up." Everyone got in the showers. Xingyun started talking to Biao. "That's really crazy. That's a new one we didn't know about. So, are they going to do brain surgery on us? This could be some serious stuff." "Yeah, I know. I hope it doesn't hurt, but at least this way we don't have to worry about saying anything if they catch us," replied Biao. "Let's just hope that doesn't ever happen," added Xiao. The next 2 weeks went by while they slept, got up in the morning, and got on their exercise simulators, then flight, space, and driving. They also went through periods of things being repeated. They received other knowledge this way as well, which included espionage, war tactics, nature survival, seamanship, self-defense, and cultures and customs of the main world powers. After a week, they each went in one at a time to get the chip put in their brain. It was as thin as a piece of hair and 1 centimeter long. Putting it in their brain took only a hole as thick as hair to do. From there, they made it dodge around until it got to where they wanted it. The surgery wasn't painful at all, and none of them ever felt a thing. Afterward, they were put back on the same schedule. The 2 weeks soon ended and they were transported by a high-flying stealth carrier to an unknown location. Biao could only tell that it was in the direction of the northeast. Chapter 20, Getting Caught Up to the Outside World. The television on the stealth carrier was set on the news channel. The reporter was saying, "I'm over here in the United Kingdom reporting on the current situation of the rioting that has been happening for over 2 weeks here between the Muslim South Asians, particularly those from Pakistan and Bangladesh, and the Hindu South Asians. Professor Hamadi, tell us what is happening now. What do the current polls say?" "Well, how? There are 23,230,000 Hindu South Asians in this country and 24,640,000 Muslim South Asians. Things haven't gotten better since 2 weeks ago. The nation of Bangladesh, Iran, and Afghanistan declared war on India. The East Indian man smiled and said, "No, sir, get right on in." They entered the taxi and drove off. It's been 5 years now. And you, my friend, you must have a guardian angel to still be alive in your line of duty for that long. So must you, Edward, so must you. By the way, the young man here is Mohammed and the other is Mr. Astrana, and my name is Vladimir. All right, Vladimir, ha! I see they have you going with the Kazakh identities again. Yeah, the Chinese government figures that out of all the Muslim world. We look the closest to Kazakh people. You know, most people over here don't really notice the differences between different Asian groups. Of course, it took me 3 years until I could tell the difference between French and English, or the Castilian and the Irish, or for that matter, even the Indians and the Pakistanis. Well, that is understandable. Pakistani people look very similar to Indians. And to be honest, I didn't know the difference between Chinese and other Asians for a look time. Now I can tell if someone is Japanese or Chinese, and I can tell the difference between them and Southeast Asians. Why? I can tell the difference between Northern Chinese and Southern Chinese. Like your friend Mr. Astrana here, he's from Southern China. I can tell by his skin tone and nose structure. That's right, I'm Cantonese, replied Qingyun. It seems you're getting the hang of it then, said Qingyun. Well, I still can't tell the difference between Koreans and Japanese, except in how they dress. I just hate those backstabbing Muslims. They all need to die. Biao didn't hate them. In many ways, he didn't understand why they had to kill them. He wished in his heart that the war would stop, and he had a feeling that there would be a domino effect if things kept going as they were. Edward spoke up. Well, here we are. This is where you'll meet your contact. Go inside. They'll know where to take you. It'll be downstairs in their basement. Good luck. Thanks, Edward. See you around, replied Chibi. They walked into the small Indian tourist shop and went toward the back. There a man met them and opened the door to the basement. He motioned for them to follow. They walked down the creaking stairs and went to a corner of the basement. The man pulled up a rug and, tugging at a small handle, lifted a trapdoor. A set of steps went down into the darkness. They silently followed the man down the steps and then into a deep, descending tunnel for a few minutes. The ground was moist. Biao could see a light in the distance. They walked closer to it until they were at its entrance. Standing there, Biao counted nearly 50 men. About half were Indians, 10 were white-skinned, 5 were Chinese, and the other 10 he couldn't tell their nationalities. Chapter 23, his first mission. They slowly walked into the room so not to alarm anyone. The man who led them there finally spoke in a thick English accent. Our guests have arrived from China. All eyes turned on them, as if they were analyzing their new companions. Yi stepped forward and said, "Are you ready for the process?" They nodded yes. They led him to a back room. Biao watched as he lifted up his left pant leg and they peeled off what looked like flesh and skin. But it wasn't real. It was fake. And underneath was a computer chip that was only 1 centimeter in size. They took it and put it in a computer. Surprisingly, there was all kinds of information that came out. It looked like instructions on how to make a weapon. CE came up to him. "This isn't information for our eyes to see. Believe me, the less you know, the better off you are." He pushed him away from the room. They joined the other men at the table. A teenage Hindu girl brought out food and drink. She looked at Biao, it seemed, with a little surprise in her eyes. Biao was only 18 years old, and yet here he was with these men. To her, he looked like he was only 16 her age. Biao noticed her too. He didn't know that East Indian girls could look so pretty. She casually walked away. An East Indian man spoke up. "I'm Vasha. Who are the 2 new guests?" CE said, "They are 2 new recruits, 2 more for me to babysit. The older one code name is Mr. Astrana, and the young boy here is..." Biao broke in. "Just call me Mohammed. Nice to meet you, sir. That girl you saw is my daughter Sarah. She made some food for you all to eat. Please Please eat up. You must be starving. Biao didn't have to be told twice. He grabbed his food and started to chow down. Within 5 minutes, he was done. After they were all done eating, Shi Yi spoke up to his hosts. Do you have the packages ready to be delivered tonight?